Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Beitz. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. Today's guest, Bente Vosteen, is from Germany, and she is a visionary leadership coach and the CEO and co-founder of a pioneering organization dedicated to revolutionizing early childhood education through experience-based learning. With a rich background in strategic marketing, sales, and business intelligence, Bente's collaboration with global organizations has given her invaluable insights into leadership dynamics and team development. In 2019, she experienced a profound realization that leadership transcends authority, focusing instead on genuine human connection. This insight reshaped her career, inspiring her to help leaders foster inclusive, people-centric environments by emphasizing sensory intelligence and emotional awareness, guiding leaders to create cultures of trust and collaboration. Bente, welcome to the podcast.
Doug, thanks for that lovely introduction, and I'm really happy to be here. And thanks for having me. Great to
My
be here.
pleasure. And you're actually the first person I've had from Germany, which is exciting for me because my surname is German. And as we were just talking before we hit record, August, September last year, my wife and I spent a few weeks in Germany and that sort of thing for the first time. And so it's great and I'm adjusting to the time zones differently to
Yeah.
it's your morning, my late afternoon, and
And that's so great. Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of it's kind of something that the world is getting closer together. I think this is what it is at the moment, and that it's necessary to even talk through those distances. I think this is what makes it even, if we look from space, time doesn't matter. And this is what I always, feel, if we have the right feeling towards it, nothing can stop us actually. And having said you have been in Germany, I have been in Australia, and I've been in Brisbane for quite a long time, and I even traveled where you are. So this is so nice to see in you and to feel the energy of Australia again. And I really appreciate being here with you today.
It's good. It's interesting you're talking about, things have changed in the world and now we're sort of spreading our wings and talking to people in other parts of the world. And if we're looking down from space, and it made me think, I'm thinking, yeah, it'd be pretty cool if I could make contact with an alien and one that, not a weird looking alien, one that looks a bit like us and sort of like, can we do a Zoom call, um,
For sure,
we get
for
some
sure.
interesting questions asked. I can come up with all sorts of interesting questions and get some interesting answers. Yeah, yeah. If you get a shortcut to that, you find anyone who's hooked into one, let me know and I'll send them a message.
For sure, I will.
Make for
But I think
interesting listening.
in some ways we are all aliens, because once we start shifting our perception, it feels like we get into certain terrains where we've never been in, right? And for a long time I felt like an alien, and I didn't know, how to find the right speech to talk to people about, what I discovered within myself and how I actually got to that feeling of, doing leadership coachings differently and consulting, because for a long time I was more in the strategic field, and then it totally changed to the emotional field, and emotional intelligence, and for me this is something where I feel I wasn't, I felt like an alien. Felt like an alien telling people to use their senses instead of, looking at the numbers. But at the same time, I had no choice. And I think this sometimes, pushes us to a place, where we are different for the others. And I don't know if that's kind of an alien state, but for me, it's definitely a sign, that we can change from one to another day and still be the same person, of course, from the outside. but we just, we just have the feeling we looked from space, and this is what, what we can definitely take from alien beings, I would say.
Yeah. And just on another lighthearted part of that, we lived on a tiny little island in Micronesia for many, many years. And, for over 15 years, every January, we would have to put an application in for alien registration. And we would be given this little typed out alien registration card. So we would all, the other expats and us, my wife and I, would sort of like, we should all have our annual alien party, that we, we're made to feel like we're aliens because we have to register. But yeah,
Great.
yeah, yeah. And just
Lovely
something
thought.
else you were saying there too, like it's when you get up in front of groups and that, and you have to like you're communicating now and you're feeling a bit different. I used to be a professional firefighter many years ago, so 2 days a week now I do fire safety training, and
Mhm.
when I first started 4 years ago, my boss got me to, yeah, and I'd done it when I was in the fire service for the general public and stuff many years before. And, my boss got me to watch him do a couple of classes. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's basically what it is. But he
Yeah.
had two words on one of the slides on the PowerPoint, and it said, and it was right near the beginning of the presentation, it said, remain calm. And I thought, I can't gloss over that. I can't just say when it hits the fan and you're in charge of this emergency because your workplace has put you in charge, just remain
Sure.
calm. So I actually harp on about that for 5 or 10 minutes with things that I've learned through myself through the years with scuba diving and all sorts of things. And when I first started doing it, I did feel like an alien because I'm thinking, this has got what I'm talking about right now has got nothing to do with fire safety officially. But I just took it on and now I get on it with a passion. And the other last week, we have a new guy and he's been doing fire safety training for a couple of years, but he's just new to our company. So the boss
Yeah.
got him to tag with me for 2 days. And our first couple of little courses, we didn't have that one. And then all of a sudden, the next morning, it was that class, and he's sitting in the back of the room. And I hit it. And I got this group, I hit him really heavy with it. And I went full on. And I was just getting ready to watch his face. If you're thinking, oh my God! I hope we don't have to do this because he wouldn't have a clue of. I'm just, and I use personal analogies. Everything I say is very personal. It's real life experiences where I've saved my life twice through these what I teach them. From having situations underwater where it was extremely difficult to remain calm a couple of times, and so yeah, I know exactly what you mean with feeling like an alien in front of this room. And I'm in there. I blow up, blow in, and blow out. Like I'm there for 90 minutes and I give it to them. And often I get people come up at the end and go, "Oh wow, that was the best fire safety training we've ever had," because it was so different. It wasn't just the
It
normal
was deep,
boring.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
deep and
yeah.
different. And I just so much agree to you, but I think, because you did action, and I think this is something, once we get into action, it doesn't matter what it is, and we get into those situations where we feel ourselves intense because, there is maybe some uncertainty inside, or there is fear, or there's, it's just about the emotions coming up, and you fully embrace them, and this is what happens, but you need to get into action before. And this is exactly what it is. It's not, of course, it's, if you're a firefighter, there will be so many situations happening to you, but you will not be able, to talk to people if you don't embrace it on a deeper level, because this is something, that takes us further, that takes us to something where we can really reach people and really, get them towards their own emotions, and but we need to get them empowered through that. And I think this is, I don't know if you get my point, but this is something I really feel, since I've changed, and I try to show people, for example, just little shortcuts out of movies where I think this is fitting to them very well, because I understood their language, and I understood, some of their deeper parts. As you said, staying calm in these situations is not easy, right? But once you discover your depth, it gets easy, because you can get through this, and at the same time, you just start knowing that nothing is actually as worse when you get into action. And people forget that, you know, if we don't walk up the hill, you know, we won't be somewhere at the top at some point. And we can always ask for help. And this is also something that, you know, I discovered for me in the past. I never asked for a mentor or a coach or someone who would help me to step up there. But the last years, I even had coaches who helped me finding this depth. And I think just the last year, I found how to, communicate what I experienced, because, you know, my change was like in 2019, but just the last year, actually, I discovered, you know, I felt everything inside, but it's still a way to get the bridge to communicate it towards the outside, towards people, and you know, to make them benefit from what you've experienced. And I think this is when we first start the action, and then, you know, embrace all the feelings that come with it. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So on your website, you've got a quote and it says, "My coaching approach uniquely combines science and sensation, guiding you to understand how energy and communication flow within your teams." Can you just like will expand on that like a little bit more?
Of course, of course. It's, you know, getting back to 2019 and before, you know, I didn't believe in anything I couldn't see, right? You know, I believed in everything that I could, you know, read, that studies would tell me, that, and I think this is not unusual, because, you know, we stick to the things that where we can get knowledge, you know, from. But what I experienced in 2019, I couldn't find any scientific research or something about it. So what I did now is I combined everything that has been proven from there until now, and I tell people to use their senses and to trust their inner system. And with this combined approach of giving them knowledge about who we are, what our senses can do, and all the scientific research that I found in that field, as well as my own studies I did, because I did studies with children for the last 4 years. Because what I believe in, and this is, you know, is that the greatest leaders, you know, have their wisdom, you know, out of their childhood, because this is something we actually discover ourselves in the first years. But through our education, you know, and everything we go through, we forget who we are actually. And or some of us, no, I don't talk about everyone, but it's very hard, if you forget about it, to actually get back to who you are. And this is something, you know, I just made available for everyone when I start the coaching, because I think it's so important to understand that we have a past, you know, we have a present, and we have the future. But the thing is, to really know when to be present and when to take something out of your past, and, you know, when to head into the future, is very important. And when you try to live your best self. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah, no, I hear you on that. And I wasn't going to try and attempt to pronounce the name of the organization that you have founded. Can you please share that with us?
That's for sure. It's Erlebniswiese, and it means experience meter. It's kind of, because what we aim to do with this company,
Sorry,
is that
it means experience.
meadow. So it's like a big place or a space where children can experience themselves. It's meadow. I don't know if it's right. Like, this is how we translated it into English, but yeah. So basically, it's a we always see this big green ground, you know, where we have different people. It doesn't matter if they, you know, if they work with technology, or if there is just a person who, you know, who's doing like meditations with children. Like, we have totally different music, totally different directions. But what we like is to see the children walk up to the places where they feel inspired and encouraged to go, so that they can discover their talents, so that they know who they are, they get to know their strengths, they get to know what drives them, and so that they cover themselves in the first years. And this is also what Erlebniswiese is aiming to do in the future. We are we are establishing everything in Germany right now, and it was so great because I just was part of the Web Summit in Qatar, and this was the first international event we did, and I even got more people telling me to push through because it's actually something that we need in the whole world, because people believe, the way we teach people that we have systems is great, but we still, the point that people lose themselves while they keep walking, and get into who they actually should become is not healthy, because they most of the times they do not feel themselves anymore. And it's so important that we create an atmosphere and an environment where they can discover themselves.
Yeah.
So we actually bring partners into school, or we bring children into places that the partners provide where they can learn, so that they don't, just learn math through writing the numbers, but they build a table, for example, and they measure the legs of the table, so that it's more, engaging and more hands-on learning. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I had something like that when I was in kindergarten, because so when I started, like a long time ago, I'm getting up there in years a bit. We did 1 year of kindergarten and then we went straight to school, like great year one after that. But I think after a few months, I was able to talk my mother into not letting me go to kindergarten anymore because I hated it. They would make me finger paint, with the thick paints on the thing. In fact, I
Yeah.
couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
The sensory overload for me with dirty, well, what I considered dirty fingers, like because they were
Yeah.
full of paint, and the other kids loved it. And I'm like, just going, like, so if we had choices on where we go, I would have just avoided that section like anything. And I'd have probably happily kept going to kindergarten for the rest of the year. But I mean, it was such that I was able to talk my mum into not letting me go anymore, because it wasn't a requirement back then. You were required to send your child to grade one.
Yeah.
That was the law. Whereas the kindergarten was the, and then mum used to clean houses and stuff, so she would just take me with her, and I would go.
But that's great that
You
you
know,
got to convince her, because
yeah,
in our world, I mean, so many adults need to get to work, and mothers, when my boys, I have two boys, they're 8 and 9, and when they were like 2 and 3, I was still home, so I went back to work, when both of them were 3. And I did, yeah, I was self-employed, so I could always, see when I get to do something. But I think that's not usual, right? So most of the adults go back to work when the child is 1 year. And this is exactly, you don't see their needs anymore, because you are so stuck in what you actually have to
mm,
deliver,
mm,
that it's, and this is really dangerous as well, because if children lose themselves when they are 1 or 2, it's even harder for them to understand. And with all the technology we have right now, and also like in the Web Summit, of course, there are lots of tech companies, AI companies, but all of them said, what you do, we created a portal where partners and schools and kindergartens can meet to, exchange and to book, and it's still automated, but to have the hands-on experience, to have the social impact and the people, being with the children is so needed as well, because, they need to shape their identities. And we forget that. I mean, children between 0 and 12, they still need to shape identities in order to understand the world. When we give them so many, even, realities that do not exist, it will be so difficult for them to find out who they actually are. And as you said, with the parents, I mean, your mom was at home and it was fine that you were just around, and it helped you, to stay connected to yourself and not do something that you actually don't want to do. And I think this is something, or do not want it to. And I think this is something that is not common in this world anymore,
oh,
because, yeah,
yeah, that's right.
yeah,
Yeah, I hear you on that. So the podcast's about intuition, and particularly helping men to develop their intuition. So you work, some of the people, your clients are HR teams and things like that. And
yeah.
So you're helping them now to get in touch with their senses, helping them with intuition, emotional intelligence, and things like that. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. And as you mentioned, I'm working most of the times with men. So I have a few female, also in female, also in my team approaches, but most of the leadership teams, because I'm more or less in Asia at the moment, working with teams, and I would say there are lots of female leaders as well, but most of the times in the leadership teams, I have men. And I never thought even in that direction, because Middle East, of course, is also from a culture perspective totally different. But what I discover is, as we all as humans have female and male parts within us, and for some reason, I get great trust from men. And this is what I discovered. And even though I'm a female, I think it's always how you balance your energy inside. And I was not able to do that before my change. This is the funny thing. Before I changed, I was actually afraid of men. I was kind of, looking to my private side, I was married twice and I got divorced twice in my life. So this is, I never had, but since I changed, I feel and embrace the thing that I have inside myself, which is also male, of course, much differently. And I have the feeling I understand on a deeper level and I feel men much more. And this is why I think companies also rely to me, because this is what most of the women work with women most of the time. But for me it's different. And I think it's because I first of all I grew up with two brothers and I have two sons. And I think I understood the deeper knowledge, of male, because of my brothers and because of my sons as well. It gave me a different perspective. And when I changed within myself and I understood that we actually have the possibility of understanding our essence, and the essence, you know, can be 10,000 years old. It can, but it can also be 2,000 years. And maybe it's difficult to follow now, but what I like to aim, or where I like to aim to, is like, I've been not living only this life, and this is what I know. And I believe, we can be in past lives or in future lives, we will not be male or female. We it can differ, and I truly believe that I understand it so well, because I had been a male for a few lives, previous lives. and this is something of course I do not put out when I get into my leadership coachings, but people feel the energy I create. And this is through what we do, for example. And I always take them back to their childhood. Like when we get into the first evening of being together, I asked them up front, within the meetings, what their favorite food is when they were children. And they would tell me. And what we do is, when we get to the first evening dinner, I would ask, I would ask the hotel staff to prepare that as a starter for everyone. And what happens is, because men often have difficulties to get to their essence and to their intuition, because they have to be strong. Men just have to be strong. And this was, what we experienced the last 200 years, right? We are strong, and probably even before. But when they get their favorite food they had as children to the table, and they see it, they smell it, most of them embrace their moms, they embrace the feminine, right? So they start talking through that. They tell each other what they've experienced, and what happened to them, what kind of feelings came up, when they got home having this food. And this is what I mean with sensory experiences. I don't even have to talk through this. I don't even have to tell them, how to experience the food, because they do it naturally at the time. And they even open up to their colleagues, and to the people within their team, even though they are leaders, right? And this is so great about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and I guess you're letting them see a different side of life and they're experiencing that. And yeah, I mean, what a great way to get them to open up without even having to, because do do they go into your training voluntarily? Is it their idea or is it their company's idea?
Of course, it's their company's idea, but the thing is, when what I do is I offer like meetings we have up front. So I would like have two one-on-ones virtually with two of the leaders, because I mean, of course, if people don't know me and I'm not doing this approach for the last 20 years. I first started after 2019, and I slowly changed my approach. So, I was always, and this is, most of the times they hire me for a combination of strategic and emotional intelligence approach. But the thing is, we won't get to the strategic part, because once they understood their essence, and they have a gap towards the essence. I don't say they understood, because what happens is, of course, it also causes some confusion, because when you start feeling yourself, a new world will open up. And this is why I take them out. I really tell, HR and the management, I need to take those people out for 3 or 4 days to get into the desert, or to have an environment where I make them feel safe. Because the problem is, sometimes there are so many layers we didn't look at for years. And I get them to open, but the problem is, when they open, they need an environment where they don't have their computers with them, where they don't have their cell phones, where they just get to experience themselves at least for 2 days, to fully embrace who they are, because otherwise it can also go wrong. Because it's not, it's really, some of them have experienced really bad things also, and they embrace them at this time. So yeah, what I like to say, as your question was referring to, they do not decide themselves, but after those talks, which is a mixture out of strategic, looking at the numbers, looking at who is working in their company, but then telling them, okay, you do great, and I understand the language of your business and intelligence, but I actually like to take you there, because I think when you feel yourself, you feel your numbers, and you don't even need a strategic plan, because it comes naturally. And most of the times they agree after that. But yeah, this is how it usually develops.
Yeah. So sensory coaching, um,
Hmm.
and again, I'm just reading from your website. So a concept that emphasizes the role of emotions, intuition,
Yeah,
and physical awareness. So you're out there telling them they're going to do this plus sensory, sorry, plus strategic, but you tend to more err towards the side of sensory and
yeah,
emotional
yeah.
intelligence. Yeah, yeah.
Because I
Letting
like, yeah.
knowing that the strategic will just fall into place.
Definitely, definitely, because they are leaders, because they are leaders. But what most of the times, when we think about ourselves, we get into a new position, right? And we have like a team with hundreds of people below us. We need to serve. It's a big responsibility, but when we don't know ourselves, it's stress, and it's negative stress, because we try to, put up a system that kind of covers all of those people. But if we are free within ourselves, and if we feel ourselves, we don't need any system anymore, because the thing is, we naturally do the right things. And we embrace people, because we have the knowledge, right? We studied something that brought us into that field, or we had certain experiences that let us become a leader. But what we are missing is the freedom to trust ourselves most of
Mm.
the time. And I believe this applies to so many people in this world, because of course, when you never get the chance to fully embrace, or to fully expand your wings, And this is, what happened to me for so many years, and this is why I know it so well, because until I was 37, I was too shy to show who I am, because also I wasn't understanding my inner nature. And you can grow on the outside. You can become a leader. You can become, even maybe like a president of a country. But the thing is, when you don't grow at the same level and you balance that with your inside, you are empty. And what happens when you are empty? You can't feel people, you can't feel the company, and you can't feel the numbers. And I think this is what makes sensory coaching so special, because it's all about embracing all your senses to get back to that inner part of yourself, and still knowing that you are a leader, right? We don't forget that. We also don't forget about the knowledge and the numbers. But first of all, we need to find a point where we can fully open our wings and be as authentic as we can, because this is what we need to do in this world in order to have our 100% of energy. And this is also something I discovered since since I know who I am and fully embrace everything I have. I have endless energy. People don't understand how I do that. I have two boys, I do the leadership coaching, I have the company, I learn Arabic, I do my sport, the things, but this comes naturally because I am back in my energy, or I'm fully in my energy. I'm not back. I think as a child, I used to feel that energy level. And this is also, what I say, it's, when you get to that perception that you had as a child and still embracing the knowledge that you created throughout your life, you're unstoppable. This is
Mm.
what this is truly what I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Using because you're doing work with kindergartens and with adults, and it's interesting talking about both. And I'm just sort of picturing these men who they're in positions of leadership. You've taken them out into the desert somewhere, and you're teaching them things, and they're opening up. But all of these men, at times in their mind, are little boys back in kindergarten, and and who would have known that some of those other little boys at that kindergarten are now their employees or their employer? There's and men
So
are big,
true.
big tough on the outside, but where like we talk with the very opening, we were joking around a little and talking about feeling like aliens and stuff. I mean, I felt like an alien at kindergarten. Hence, I talked my mother into like removing me from there. I didn't want to be there. The teachers To me, the teachers were aliens because they were making me do things I didn't want to do. Like I was not on the wavelength with the teachers. I wanted out of there. And it was scary for me because, and mum, we didn't have a car, or mum didn't have a car. So she used to walk me up a couple of streets, and I would stay with these other kids, and their mum would drive them and me to kindergarten. And these other boys didn't like
Oh,
me, and they hated the fact that I was getting in their car and going. And so like they were my age, but it was just like somehow or other my mum knew their mum. I've no idea how. But so
yeah.
it was just like this. I felt like an alien the whole time. And I men take that, without realizing it, we take stuff like that into adulthood, into our
Yeah.
first job, into our first promotion, into our fifth promotion. And I'm just visualizing back to my life now. I did a trade from when I was 15 to 19. And then at 19, I finished that and I joined and became a professional firefighter. And I was in our little, class of our little group. There was 8 of us, all started on the same day, and we did the recruit school together. And I was
Yeah.
by far the youngest at 19. The others were sort of mid to late 20s, and so I felt like an alien there. Um, but it's just, and then you've finished that, and now you've finished your training. Now you're on the truck and you're ready for an emergency, but you're still the junior guy. And then after 5 years, you do an exam and you become the senior guy. But me, for the first 5 years as the boss, I was always the youngest guy on the truck because the others joined so much later. Um,
Sure.
yeah, and most of them had been firefighters for 10, 20, 30 years. And I was the boss and I was still young. I was still in my mid 20s. And I always
Oh,
felt like an alien. It was always like, should I be here? Should I be doing this? But it was one of those things where I just couldn't sit and do and just sit and not try and grow because that just felt like I needed to leave. I couldn't just sit there and not do anything. But yeah, the feelings, the emotions of the whole thing weren't that different to kindergarten. You know,
I'm so glad that you just mentioned that because it's like, I just wanted to ask you, like, what you think you would have felt different if someone would be there who would have talked about it at the time, who would have, told you out of their own experiences. Like, because what I experience with children a lot is, when I start telling them about things how I felt in their age, and I encourage them to talk about it, the weirdest things come up because most of the times people don't see them and they don't ask them. And I think this is what you were, if one of the moms being in the same car as you as boys, would have felt you,
mm,
and would have said, listen, just imagine it would be the other way around, or, it's,
yeah,
I think it would have changed perspectives. And I
yeah,
think this is, what I exactly do. I don't do anything else.
mm,
I feel that nature. And also what you've mentioned about being the youngest, in the firefighters team, and, being the leader actually in that, in that perspective, being so young, this experience, I experienced the same. I was like a PA to the CEO when I was like 22, and all the people working, in the field with me, I actually had to advise. And it was really tough because I worked with the accounting team, and they were like 50, upwards, like they were much older than me. And of course, I went up to them, tried to talk to them in a way so that we were on eye level, but they would always see my age, right? And they would always, but those kind of experiences, I think, are great, to also make different experiences, though, they don't help us to open up. But as with what we gained through that, I think it's so important for us. And this is why I love, you doing the podcast, because it's this is something we can give to others, not because we are better or because, but we feel, what others might go through, and especially the young ones. And this is why I think it's so important to also look at both sides, as
mm,
as you also mentioned, because the very young ones, they still have the chance to not go through what we went through, just by seeing them, just by asking them, just by, encouraging them to talk about their feelings, actually.
yeah,
And at the same time, I'm doing nothing else with the leadership teams. And this is what I find so exciting. As you said, once something went wrong in our very early childhood, it will stay with us. And sometimes it's exactly what blocks us from being
mm,
great.
mm, yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
I was talking to my wife yesterday, yeah, yesterday, and I, I've always had, like, I'm a scuba instructor. So you think Doug's calm in the water. I was a nervous student when I first started to learn, like about 30 years ago. But I have my whole life struggled with swimming on top of the water.
Okay.
And um, I love being under the water. Like, we've got the ocean, a 25-minute drive from here, the Pacific
Yeah.
Ocean. And if you give me a mask, snorkel, and a pair of fins, I'll head out there. I'll go out behind those waves, and we've got there's a very small reef out there. And I've been out there with my boys. It's not it's not like a real great spot, but for something to do one day we did it. totally comfortable, and I'll go out there and duck dive down all day long. So I'm really comfortable under the water. But you put me on top of the water without the mask, snorkel, and fins in water where I can't touch, I'm not quite so happy, particularly if it's the ocean and it's kind of choppy and the waves are starting to every
Sure. Yeah.
30 to 60 seconds, you get one break over your face a bit. I'm not cool, calm, and collected there at all. Like, all I want to do is just give me a mask and I'll take a big breath and I'll duck dive and I'll stay under that water. And I've actually, for the last 8 months ago, I interviewed a Australian Ironman champion, and he's actually four-time world champion iron, like
Oh,
life-saving Ironman in the surf. And he offered to take me out the back because I've always I go and swim in the waves, but the waves push you back to shore. So I'm fine with that. I go out to my waist and I catch the wave in, and I'm fine with that. But I and he said, if you want, I'll take you out the back. And I'm like, and I was sort of like, that. But anyway, it got the better of me. After a week or two, I thought, I have to do this. Like, I have to do it. I'm thinking I'm 60 now. Like, if I don't do it now, when am I ever going to do this? So for the last 8 months, like I started in the middle of winter, and our winters aren't as bad as Germany. Okay. So,
sure.
all right, right, right. But still, you get what you're used to. I started swimming 2 or 3 days a week in the public pool, and I'm still swimming now. And I should be way better at swimming than I am. And I don't know what is the block. Like I said to my wife yesterday, I am debating going through, like engaging a hypnotist to see if they can work with me to take this block away. Um, like I do when I'm on scuba, I do crazy stuff and I've got to pull myself back all the time. I'm out on the
Yeah.
edge, like I have zero fear under the water. Like yeah, I won't bore you with some things I've done, but like I do crazy
Yeah.
stuff and I have zero fear. But up on that surface, it's a different thing. So there's this block, and I don't know whether
Yeah.
it's from when I was a child, when I was little, and I can't remember what happened, or is it from a previous life? Like, did I drown? I don't know. And it's like I'm at that stage where I'm swimming because as a child, I avoided swimming in the swimming pool like the plague. And because we're in a warm, temperate climate,
Yeah.
in summer, they would take us from school in the bus down to the public pool. And I would always just sit on the sidelines and just, and there was too many kids for the teacher. So like you just slip through the cracks. And
Yeah.
I would never, I hated putting my face in the water. And there's something there, like it's crazy that I can, and when we were overseas, we had our own little scuba resort. If we got someone who was thinking about learning to dive, but they were very apprehensive and or
Yeah.
anxious, my wife would say to them, Doug is the best instructor for you because he has so much empathy for nervous students. And I do. Like, and I recognize their nerves immediately because it's how I was when I first learned to scuba dive. And I didn't choose, I didn't one day think, oh, I want to become a scuba diver. I thought years ago, let's leave Australia, let's move to this little island and build a hotel and restaurant. And my neighbor across the road said to me one day, would you mind, like, if we came along with you and we did scuba diving, and our businesses complemented each other? And anyway, I said sure. So
Oh,
we get over there, and the scuba diving where we were is in the top 5% on the planet. Like, and the customers would come along from all around the world, and I'd talk to them in the restaurant and stuff, and they say, oh, like, and they talk about diving. I said, oh, I'm not a diver, and they're like, and they're just like silent or gobsmacked, like, you live here and you don't scuba dive? It's sort of like, I guess, like living in the Swiss Alps or somewhere like that, and you didn't
yeah.
snow ski. You
Don't
don't,
ski.
oh, I don't go outside in the snow, you know. And so eventually, like after a year or two, I thought, this is kind of ridiculous. So it was very hard for me to overcome the whole thing because learning to scuba dive, you've got to take your mask off underwater and put it back
Yeah.
on full of water and then clear the water out. And I hated that. Like I really did. Um, I learned to, I didn't learn to love it, but I learned to do it. And but yeah, these blocks we have, and it's,
That's so great.
you know, it's
Thanks for sharing that. I'm really, I think this is really interesting. And it's most of the times it is about water. That is such a great topic that you just, brought up, because with most of the people, it's about water.
mm,
Water or fire.
yeah, fire I got no issues with, but and also too, years ago I've been and studied energy clearing and all sorts of things, and our teacher's written some wonderful books on, and she's American, but she's written some wonderful books on Chinese medicine and things like that, and our different elements in our makeup from our date
Yeah.
of birth, etc., etc. And my primary thing is water. That's that's my
Wow.
main element.
Wow.
Yeah, but I have this fear with part of it, and other bits I have this euphoria because, I've done over 2,000 scuba dives, and like they're just about all the time. I felt extremely blessed to be where I was on those days, knowing that one day in the future somewhere I wouldn't be there anymore. But yeah, but
Wow.
there's one angle of the water that's just scares the heck out of me, and I'm really keen to overcome it, but it's scary. Like I get in the
Well, I
pool
think you're
and
doing great. I
I'm
mean,
I'm doing laps in the pool. I'm doing my 4, 5, 600 meters, and
yeah.
I'm in there, and the thoughts in my head are just messing me up, and all of a sudden I just start to get out of sync. I get out of breath. But when I can stop those thoughts, I'm able to swim more consistently. It's such a mind game.
But doing this hypnosis, what you mentioned, is a good way to discover. I can tell because I did myself, because I had the same thing with fire. I never had an issue. I love swimming. I'm a swimmer. I'm even educating kids becoming swimmers. So for me, I've been like in the pool my whole life. I swim in the sea. I do water sports, all you can imagine. So for me, it's a totally different perspective.
Mm.
And even people ask me, I have a friend who has some kind of same issues as you, and he likes to put his head under the water while he's swimming, and also, when he's crawling, he couldn't do. And we went out like for half a year, even in winter, and we're swimming together. And I think pushing through is one of the options, to definitely feel differently. It's the same when you get into the forest and you don't feel anything, and you go into the forest every morning, your perception will change. And this is what I believe when you get into action in the water. But hypnosis is really a great thing, because I had the same with fire. And when I went into hypnosis to travel back into one of my lives, which is also one of the things that I primarily experienced in this area here, I got to know that I got burned in the 1700 in one of my lives. And it's every time, I get close to fire, something within me, I freeze. It's even, when like I light up a match and it will fall to the ground, and everyone else would just pick it up and blow it out or whatever, I freeze. And
Mm.
and my former husband, he just got so, how can you do that? You need to pick it up, or you need to do something about it. But this is what happened. And being in Dubai in January, I watched a fire show, and I was sitting in the first row. And for some reason, I had the feeling something will happen. It was, intuitive. I thought something, this man will do something. And I was sitting there, and he was having this change with the fireballs,
Hmm.
at the end of the chains. And he was like swinging around, and I was fine. But I knew it will happen. And then he came with this chain, and he stopped the chain and the fireball like 2 centimeters in front of my face.
Oh,
And
wow.
everyone behind me, next to me, they were all screaming because they thought this fireball would hit me, but somehow he measured, like, how far he can go. And since then, something happened, because I wasn't scared. I wasn't, I was feeling the heat, and I felt the others having fear, but I wasn't in, because I knew intuitively this would happen. And I think this is also something, if we really become one with what, gives us anxiety. And I think This is for example, with the water, I think, if you put your head into the water and you really embrace the water at the time, not even doing any action there, but just, putting your head down and feeling the water, everywhere, and embracing all your senses at the time, it can do
Mm,
differently, maybe. Maybe
yeah,
that's something you could try, because
yeah.
for me, this experience with, without actually me doing anything, but just sitting there knowing that this will happen somehow, it unlocked something again. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a few years ago, I mean, I only did it 3 times, but I went in the sensory deprivation tanks, with you have
Yeah.
like a very shallow water with a lot of salt in it. And I was zero fear. I was just straight in those things. And my wife had a look at it. She's like, nah, because it was the claustrophobic thing with it closing in because it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
super dark. And for me, not the slightest problem and all you've got out is just from your chin around to the top of your eyes is out of the water. Everything else is, and that I was like, my kids bought it for me for Christmas or something like that, like
Yeah.
3 visits to the place. Zero problem with that at all. Like just straight in,
Okay.
easy.
Okay.
But
That's
it's
great.
it's the other way. It's the face in the water.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and and but if you give me a snorkel and I could breathe, facing, but in saying that, I would want more than a snorkel. I would want a mask. I want to see, and I want to breathe. So the mask and the snorkel, I'm there all day till I fall asleep, no problem. But if I've got to keep lifting my head out of the water and breathing and put my head back in, I get something happens. I get out of sync with it, and yeah, it's challenging. Anyway.
It's also, I think it's but it's also interesting, and I think these are things that actually matter, right? When we look at that, and when you embrace that, and this is what I found, great, because most of the people, they think, okay, this is, I just don't go into the water anymore. They don't see it consciously, and I think this is something this is what we do with so many things in our lives. We know that we have a block, or that something is blocking us from moving forward, but we don't look at it with a conscious eye. And I think this you do great. I mean, one day I'm sure you will overcome that.
Mm, yeah. And my wife
Yeah.
says, she goes, "Oh, I'm going to be so scared the day you do it." Like she's worried about sharks, and I'm like, "Oh God!" Like, I've been in the water. I've been in the water so many times swimming with
Yeah.
sharks. We used to get like a little 500 ml disposable plastic water bottle, and we
Yeah.
would take it down inside your wetsuit, and we would pull it out, and we would half fill it with air, and put the lid back on, and then you would sort of squeeze it, and it crinkles and makes this funny crinkling noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, doesn't that attract the sharks? So it was like they would, well, because it sounds like a distress signal, sounds like a fish in distress or something in
Yeah.
distress, and the sharks just come from everywhere, whoosh. So like, yeah, sharks don't bother me at all. So I'm like, I
So
said,
you're
well,
not
I
scared
went,
about sharks? That's
not at all.
whoa.
Yeah, no. Actually, the one encounter I had with the shark
Yeah.
once, we were swimming just sorry, scuba diving close to shore. We came up from the dive and we looked, and about a kilometre offshore, out in thousands of feet of water, there was a big school of birds. And my customer said, "Oh, can we please go out there? Please, I want to duck dive into the school
Yeah.
of fish."
Yeah.
So out we go, and it was a little bit choppy and rough out there. And it was a father and son, and the son was a professional, award-winning photographer. So he's dived in and he's come up, and it's just free diving. He's come
Yeah.
up and he's gone, "Oh, there's about 30 baby sharks." And when I say baby sharks, I'm talking like 30, 40 centimeters, like, 12,
Yeah.
14 inches long. They're little. And he said, they're underneath the school of fish. So his dad jumped in, I jumped in, and away we go. And then we sort of, just with the chop, and it was a bit messy, we all sort of drifted apart. And we were all probably like 40, 50 meters apart. And I'm looking down, and all of a sudden I see a shark down there, and it's over a meter long, but not much bigger than that. And it's just and you can tell with sharks with their fins on which angle their fins are, whether
Yeah.
they're being aggressive or not. And the shark's probably never seen a human before. And because we are literally in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And it just starts very casually and calmly swimming up to me. And it started, it's 50 plus meters down. and I could just see something moving, and then it starts to come up. And it just, and I'm all on my own, like flopping around with my mask and snorkel on in the sort of half a meter chop
Yeah.
on top of the thing. And it just starts swimming up, swimming up, swimming up. And I'm thinking, this is interesting. When's it going to turn around or turn? And it didn't. It just kept coming up. And I've got it on video. And then just a reflex happened at the last minute when it was like 2 meters from me. All of a sudden, I just brought my fin up in front of between it and me. And then it just turned around and just casually swam back down at about the same speed that it came up. And I was like,
You're brave.
oh, that was
Would be
interesting.
scared.
And it probably, it was just, didn't know what I was. And it was just coming for, it was, if it wanted to bite me, I wouldn't have seen it coming. Sharks are
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
thousand times
yeah,
faster than we are in the water.
yeah.
I wouldn't have seen it. It would have just hit. And yeah, but at that point, I sort of put my head up and I stuck my arm up and got the boat driver's attention and sort of waved him over. And I said, oh, I've had enough for a while. Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is something I was always scared of, to be honest, being in the ocean in Australia, because I did surfing and
Yeah.
for me, like, but I've never had a situation where I was close to a shark, but
That
I
you
was,
knew of.
yeah,
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 that you knew of. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's it. It's great. Yeah. And I love sharing stories like that to sort of, to help me because I know the more I share stories, the more other people will share stories. And all these stories help. And there'll be someone out there listening who's got a fear of some description. And, hopefully we can help them. So,
I think this is, it's all about storytelling and exactly. And this is also what I encourage the children to do, to also listen to adults, because, sometimes even when some parts of the stories are not interesting to them, they can learn from that. And yeah, we have those electronic devices, and it's not the same because it doesn't spread energy with it. And when someone is telling a story, and this is what I love so much about listening to people and listening to podcasts, is that you get not only the story, you get kind of a feeling with that story. And this is what you do not get, when you watch a movie or something, in ways, because it's not a personal, it's something written up, but it's not something someone experience themselves. And I think this is what makes storytelling so great, because it offers us the possibility of looking at ourselves and thinking, okay, this part I've experienced too, but I went through it totally differently, or I looked at it from a totally different perspective. And I think this is also when we encourage to use our senses more. Like, every one of us is unique and we all have a different sense. And sometimes even I do the coachings, and I'm the coach or I'm the consultant. I even learn from people who come up to my programs, because this is what I love. If people open up and they had experiences that I never had, and the way they shape their reality out of these experiences, is always something that we can all learn from. And I also think this is this indicates peace if we do, because we understand people on a deeper level, with just embracing their experience, and not only seeing, because what also happens in this world is people go to school, they do their studies, they start working, and they have their experienced life, and then they think they know everything, and then they stop. But the thing is, to stay young, to stay healthy, to stay equipped, with your energy, it's so important to listen to others, and to always keep learning, because this is how we evolve, and this is how we bring the best out of us, and this is something I would encourage everyone to do. And I always tell, when I have a speech, that I always tell, the first thing when I come up on stage, or when I start talking to people, I tell them what I learned the week before. Because there's such a big gap between our children think we or adults know everything. They don't need to learn anything anymore in their lives, and that's not true. Like
For
we
sure.
learn every day, and if we do great. And yeah, and this is something I would so much encourage even any politician to do, because children think, oh, wow, this is a politician, but there's no connection between these people, because there's nothing they they share. But if they share learning, or if they share a story, this is something great. And it doesn't matter if they tell people about what they learned, or what they learned from experiencing, or what they learned from others. It's just about the learning.
Yeah. And the something you're talking there, like with the
Yeah,
different stories and we
yeah,
share and people on podcasts, often that information that comes out is intuitive. And
yeah,
I mean, and to explain what I mean by that, I see intuition, one way of it, there's a benevolent force out there that's invisible that we can't see, that likes us and wants the best for us, and wants the best for those who are around us and who may listen to us. And so it's dropping something into our mind. It's bringing something to our memory that we know, or it's bringing something new. Because I know when we teach, I've learned so much about all sorts of things when I teach.
yeah,
When I do my scuba instruction, my fire safety training, other training I've done in the fire service and stuff like that. When we're teaching, we're learning so much ourselves, and there's intuitive information flowing but it often won't flow if we don't open our mouth.
yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
got to
that's the
act.
thing. Exactly. We gotta act. Yeah. And
Yeah,
and and then, this is also like so many people are, stuck in their lives, and they do not grow inside, but it's not because they don't want to. It's because this little step they would need to take, and most of us think, it's difficult to take that one first step, because they always like to see themselves like on step 21. But if they just take the first step, and it gets easy. And if you encourage that to do one step every day, it's all good. And that is what I experience as well in the world. It's energy, shapes around you in a way that for me, it's so unique since I started, how also the energy creates fields for me to walk further on. But the thing is, you need to take the one step, and the first step, and it doesn't matter how hard it is, if you change your routine, or if it can be just one little thing. I think when I started, I just started with a few exercises every day to have routines, and to take action, and yeah, and to remind myself every morning, also with the kids. Like, this is also a topic I face with lots of my leadership teams when they have children, because they think, yeah, they need to get great leaders, or need to become great leaders as well. And I teach them that, and they need to be focused in the morning, and they need this, and then I need to breathe, because I really, I see that they have good intentions, and I don't want to stop them from having good intentions. But the thing is, it's so important that the children they have find their own ways to be strong, to
yeah,
know what's good for them. And most of them, cry sometimes, even after like 2 days, because they realize, that's what's stopping them. They actually give to the next generation. And this is also why I think it's not something, when we do leadership coachings, it's not about the leadership. It's actually about our whole being. Everything is involved. And it doesn't matter if you're a leader, or whether you are, an educator, but embracing the fact that everyone is different, and that everyone, needs to find out about his own structure, is so great when we realize that.
yeah. Yeah, I've got four sons, and it's yeah, they're all adults now, but it's and I see most of them quite a lot, and it's so hard to just keep the lips zipped and let because I I mean,
Yeah.
the older I get, the less I know. I know that for a fact. It's just I realize there's so much more out there that I've not been exposed to. But you want the best for the kids, but then you realize the only way that they're going to master this stuff is to learn it themselves.
So,
So you can offer some gentle info, but then you've just got to shut up and you've just got to let them fall. And you've got to, and not that they fall very often or anything like that. They don't. They're really good kids. Like my wife and I are amazed at
oh,
where they are and who they are and how they hold themselves. But yeah, if you see like a crash coming, you can like, I've crashed doing that before. Don't you remember when you were four and this happened and that happened and dad stuffed this up and did that? And you're like, oh, no, I don't remember that. "Oh, well, I did. And so just, yeah, it just, yeah, but they've got it. If you don't experience it, you don't, it's,
for sure.
yeah, it just, life can't be all theory. Yeah,
But four boys is also, quite exotic. I think this is, because, you're a man yourself, and then you have four little ones of those. I think this is, and if you are someone who's, embracing a lot and feeling, and then it's even more difficult to not want them, to have a bit of an easier path, I think. And this is what we, try, because when we tell them things out of our perspective, it's because we want to kind of make them feel better throughout what we've
mm,
that we want them to have better experience than we had, but this is not how it works, right? It's because everyone is unique, and still you feel close to them, and they because you also know them since they are so small, you
yeah,
you see things differently,
yeah,
and still it's a great experience also to have kids and
yeah.
to see that, and you learn so much out of that as well. This is what I feel like, even with my
Well,
sons, like,
yeah. Well, what did you
yeah,
say they are? 8 and 9?
8 and 9, yeah, they
Yeah,
turn 9 and 10 now, so yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So we're just wait until another few years when they start realizing mum doesn't actually know everything and they start like because my boys now they're sort of I think part of whether they realize it or not, their goal is to keep me current with the changing world, technology,
Yeah.
etc., etc., etc. And they're good at it. And I often do go to them for advice, cheap free advice from the kids, like what do you do with Instagram again? And they're like, oh, geez, Dad, this is the 100th time, and it's but it's great. But I do learn a lot from them. I really, really do. Now there's a scripture in the Old Testament in the Bible, and it says, "Children, children of one's youth are like arrows in the hand of a warrior." And my wife and I, like, we did start early. Like, we've been married 40 years. And so our children
Wow.
our boys are aged 39, 37, 33, and 23. And so we've got a wide range of them. And but like our youngest, our 23-year-old, he's like, if you saw a picture of him, like he's built like a tank. He goes to the gym every day. So he's put an app on my phone and with my gym workout thing. He's in charge of Dad's physicality. So, and he gets
Okay.
messages back. He can tell when I go to the gym and what I did and what I didn't do. It's all there. Just like it saves me thinking about it. Like he's studies it deeply and he puts like 2 or 3 videos on Instagram every day of himself working out and sharing. He's
Wow.
way beyond his years and he just loves to help people and so
That's
it
amazing.
really
Yeah.
does change as they get older a lot. I can tell you a lot different. Yeah,
I just wanted to ask you how old the boys are, but yeah,
yeah,
I mean, for me, like, this is not happening yet. But what I realize is, even though they are just 9 and 10, or turning 9 and 10 this year, with technology, they are so quick. Like it's,
Yeah.
something, even if just something I use in the kitchen, if I clean that and I put it into pieces because I like to clean it and I don't have any idea how to get it back. I just need to ask them, and it's there. Like, and this is what fascinates me as well, because they don't have anything that helps them or they read through. They just do intuitively, and they have like a technical understanding. And I kind of, I never had this. So for me, it's not in that sense, of course.
Yeah.
And also with, just with apps and computers, and it's changing a lot. And I can imagine that this will happen, but
Yeah.
it's also, I'm also looking forward to that somehow, because I think it's also, lovely when you see, what they are able to do, and what they are capable of doing. I think this is
Yes.
something, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And we've got two grandchildren now, 6-year-old grandson, 12-year-old
Wow.
granddaughter. And
Congratulations.
the grandson, like he's constantly like FaceTiming, mostly my wife, like he's like, Grandma, you're there, like, or if he rings me, I know Grandma didn't answer. It's like he goes straight to Grandma, and he's always got his big sister sort of sitting there, like, and he lets her talk sometimes, but he's got to be in control of the whole conversation. And it's happening. And oh yeah, and they don't live too far away, but at the moment they're doing a lap of Australia with the parents in a
Yeah,
caravan, and so every day is a
right.
new. There is somewhere different and new, and
Sure.
yeah, it's
Wow,
yeah,
that's
and
amazing.
yeah, the technology, he's just bang straight on it. Oh, it's 5 p.m. I'll ring Grandma. Yep. So yeah,
Yeah, and they get so used to it, and I think this is also a great thing, and I think if it's if they use technology to have human connection, this is great. This is great. If they use technology to get busy, this is not great, and
mm,
and that is also what we try to, you know, kind of communicate also with our Erlebniswiese, with the company we built up, because you know technology is great, AI is great, but we should use it, for human connection, and not to, you know, use it because
disconnect.
there
Yeah.
is no human connection. And
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
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 good point. And that's, hence what we're using right now. We're
yeah,
halfway around the world from each other. Yeah, it's great. Excellent.
yeah.
Um, I'll put your contact details and all that sort of your websites and things like that in the show notes. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to talk about before we wind up?
I think we did a fair share of everything, and I'm so glad, because I also loved your points, and what you mentioned about the water. I really, I think it's great. It's a great, the only thing maybe that if people want to get in contact, they can always reach out. They can always talk to me directly. Not having the fear of she's only available via email. No, I'm not. If someone really wants to get to know me or has a certain question, they can always schedule a call. This is maybe something I can give to people. I'm available.
I
This is
did
my job.
see that. I did see that on your website where you can just
Yeah,
go straight in there and click
yeah,
and
yeah,
arrange a call. Yeah,
yeah.
there's a like a calendar comes up. Yeah, that's excellent.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
great.
apart from that, I was just, I'm feeling very grateful, especially to do that in the morning. I think I never had a podcast interview in the morning. Like it's, I haven't even started my day, and I go with so many positive vibrations and impulses now. So this is lovely. I really like it, Doc.
Good, excellent. Oh, I've enjoyed it a lot, so I know the listeners will. And thank you for your time, Bente. And like you say, it's the beginning of your day, so enjoy the rest of your day. And yeah,
Thank
well,
you.
there we go. Thank
Enjoy your
you.
evening, Doc. And thanks for having me. And yeah, I'm happy to see what comes next, and I will definitely keep listening. Thank you so much.
Excellent. My pleasure. Well, we're at the end of another thought provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.